Recently, cars from the 1990s have exploded in popularity, and if you weren't aware of that, check out these record-setting auction results on Bring a Trailer. YouTubers like TJ Hunt, Daily Driven Exotics, and Tommy Effia, or whatever he's called now, have brought these cars back into the mainstream public eye. What is it about these 90s cars that makes people love them so much? I'm the owner of an MR2 myself, and some of my friends own or have owned cars like NSXs, Supras, Integras, CRXs. So today I'm going to share with you what makes these cars so special and the real reason people are willing to pay so much money for them. But first, allow me to drop a bomb on you. 1990 was 34 years ago. Feeling old yet? And things were different back then. We had grunge bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam topping the charts, and during that same time there was this East Coast, West Coast beef going on in the hip hop world. Spoiler alert, Tupac and Biggie died. We watched TV shows like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Seinfeld, or Friends if you relied on a laugh track to tell you when something was funny. Public figures like O.J. Simpson and Monica Lewinsky were also in the spotlight for not very nice reasons. We watched movies like The Matrix, and we played GoldenEye 007 on the Nintendo 64. And everybody thought that the world was going to end when the clock switched from 1999 to the year 2000.
The panic about the world grinding to a halt because of the Millennium Bug came to nothing. The millions spent correcting computers so they wouldn't switch back to 1900 after midnight was obviously well spent.
And as for cars, well, it was the perfect mix of simplicity, technology, and styling. You see, the 70s and 80s were not really a great time for automakers, with stricter emissions and safety regulations clamping down on all the fun. But by 1990, they started to figure it out. The 90s was a golden era for Japanese sports cars like the NSX, the Supra, the RX-7, and GTR. But the phrase, "don't meet your heroes," comes to mind here because these cars weren't actually that amazing in stock form. They didn't make much power by today's standards, and they weren't a whole lot faster in a straight line than a modern Ford Explorer. But one thing they did have was character. This was when the driver-focused cockpits became so popular. People often made the claim that it was like a fighter jet inside these cars, which is kind of the most 90s thing to say ever because, well, it really didn't look like a fighter jet at all. This was also the birth of tuner culture. Japanese cars in the automotive industry are like peanut butter and jam sandwich. Either one of these ingredients on their own is kind of bland and boring, but you put them together and... For cars like the Toyota Supra, it wasn't its stock performance that made it so special, it was the fact that you could make 800 plus horsepower on an unopened engine that made that car a legend. It wasn't just about the Japanese cars though. American muscle also made a comeback in the 90s. And the big three started making cars that actually made horsepower again. Dodge and Chevy were in a horsepower war again with the Corvette and the Viper battling toe-to-toe. Some would argue that the Germans were at their peak as well. Forget the burble tunes and the interior mood lighting. This era was all about classy gentlemen's vehicles. The M3, M5, the AMG cars, they were all boxy yet sophisticated. Back then, BMW owners were doctors and lawyers, not dropshippers and TikTok stars. So why were the cars from the 90s so memorable? Well, there's a few reasons really. Take one look at a car from the 90s and you'll see that there really isn't a whole lot going on compared to today's cars. Cars from the 90s were downright boring in terms of technology. You can forget the massive infotainment screens and the self-driving characteristics. Man, you were lucky to get power seats and a CD player back then. Many of us are getting kind of sick of all of the fancy electronics in modern cars, especially when they require expensive repairs. Suddenly, the simplicity of a 90s car is starting to seem pretty refreshing. There's no denying that a modern automatic or paddle shift transmission is much faster than a typical manual. But it's not always just about the numbers. Rolling your own gears requires a certain skill level, and it can provide a really rewarding experience. These older power steering systems still felt pretty heavy and connected you to the road. Any impressive handling characteristics you might have appreciated in a 90s car came from mechanical grip, and not from computers and algorithms. Case in point, this car has 275 tires on the front. Cars from the 90s were lightweight and analog. They had buttons and knobs instead of touch screens. and it felt more like you were driving a car and not playing a video game. For the most part, every car looked different in the 90s. As a car enthusiast, you were able to take one glance at a car or truck and recognize exactly what model it was without having to read the badge. Now, I don't know about you, but these days I can't tell the difference between a Kia and a Camry anymore. Everything looks the same. Pop-up headlights, motorized antennas, T-roofs, those are all things of the past now. But that's still not why people are buying these cars up though. I was 6 years old when this car was brand new. 11 when this one left SLP with the new SS package installed. Let's face it, being an adult sucks sometimes, and my memories of the 1990s are filled with the happiness of being a kid. For many of us, life back then was even simpler than these cars were. We didn't see many crazy stories in the news, the cost of living wasn't insanely high, there was no such thing as social media, our parents would let us play outside in the neighborhood without fear of us being abducted, except for that one guy that was running around in the forest naked all the time. Life was okay. Anybody who was a kid in the 1990s is now in their 30s and 40s. This is the age where people have settled down, you know, they have their careers sorted out, they've started a family, maybe they even own a house. Chances are they're fairly comfortable at this point, and maybe they have some disposable income. And they couldn't afford to buy these legendary cars that they used to drool over in magazines and video games back then, but things are different now. Now they're in the treat yourself era. And they're willing to spend good money in an effort to get back some of those memories of playing Gran Turismo until 2 a.m. on a school night. It's not about a 25-year-old Integra being the fastest car on the street. It isn't. It's about buying a memory from back when life was okay. And for me, every time I get behind the wheel of this car, life is okay. On paper, modern cars are better. They're faster, they're safer, they're easier to drive. They're more comfortable, but they've lost something that is crucial to the automotive experience: soul. The truth is, many of the 90s collector cars have become totally unattainable. Watch this video next to see why a Toyota MR2 like this one might just be the best buy right now.